This recording will cover Chapter 1 in the Archer and Hughes Explicit Instruction textbook. And just so y'all know, I will post the PowerPoints, like just the PowerPoints for the chapter, for each chapter. And then I will also do a recording or, a PowerPoint with sound. So you can choose if you're someone who just likes to read through the PowerPoints on your own, that's totally fine. You can choose that option. But if you're someone who really wants the sound, the voice, and maybe a little more information about the slides, you can choose the options with sound, okay? And there's a few times when I talk about some videos, and to view those videos, you'll need to view just the PowerPoints, okay? So not the recordings with sound, but go into just the PowerPoints and put it in slideshow view, and then you'll be able to see the videos, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So we're going to talk about explicit instruction. This again is chapter 1, and it's just called Exploring the Foundations of Explicit Instruction. I have to tell y'all a little aside. Dr. Hughes was one of my professors at Penn State, so I feel an allegiance to this textbook. No, really, it's really a great textbook. I've used it for years. I do not get royalties. I feel that I should, but I think it's a wonderful textbook. And both he and Dr. Archer are very well known in the world of special ed and education. They're very big proponents of explicit instruction, and we will get more into that as we go through the chapters. So, what is explicit instruction? You might be wondering that. Well, if you were asked to provide a basic definition of explicit instruction, what would you say? And you don't have to write anything down, you don't have to turn anything in. This is just kind of a thought question for you. What would you say as of, today, the definition of explicit instruction might be? What are some things you might see happening in a classroom if explicit instruction principles were being implemented by a teacher? Well, again, you might not know that yet, right? But I'm going to tell you that in just a few minutes as we go through chapter 1. Sorry, I'm trying to move. There's one little part that's kind of hiding something that I need to see. We will go through. Oh, that's not what I meant to do, people. Whew. Anyway, okay. Sorry, delay of game. So just think about, if you've been out in the classrooms, if you're a teacher yourself, what are some things that you might see happening if explicit instruction principles were being implemented? Again, I'm going to tell you what some of those principles are in just a second. This is something I really want you to keep with you as we go through this course and through this textbook. Excuse me. Learning is not a spectator sport. Okay, so think about that, what that means to you, and that was from Dr. Archer. Think about what that means to you. Learning is not a spectator sport. Okay, so we're going to come back to that as we go on through this chapter. So explicit instruction is really structured and systematic and effective, right? It's an effective methodology for teaching academic skills. It's a direct approach that incorporates instructional design and delivery. It incorporates a whole bunch of things. It's characterized by a series of supports or scaffolds from you, right? From you, the teacher, that you then fade as your students become more proficient and they become more masters of the content. They're guided through the learning process until you're ready to kind of release your support and say, all right, they got this. I'm ready to give this to them. So just remember, keep in mind, learning is not a spectator sport. And you'll see what I mean as we go through the next couple of slides. Okay, so some elements of explicit instruction. So kind of talking about, thinking back to the slide the right before this, what might you see happening in a classroom? So there's a really a logical focus, or excuse me, a logical sequence. The focus instructions on the critical content, logically organized. Again, skills are broken down into smaller instructional units or smaller strategies, a clear statement of the goals and your expectations, both behavioral and academic expectations here. Review prior skills and knowledge, provide step-by-step demonstrations. This is really the modeling. Watch me, I'm going to do it. Watch me, I'm going to do it first. Okay, clear and concise language. You don't want to use 47 words when you only need 6, right? That is too much for really all students, but especially students who might struggle with a learning disability or a processing issue or something like that. So really be focused with your language. And you want to make sure you're providing an adequate range of examples and, non-examples. I want you to think about why non-examples might be important to instruction as we go through. Now, I'll come back to non-examples again, I promise. Some other elements of explicit instruction, and these are taken right from your textbook, guided and supported practice. So that's really where that scaffolding comes in. Frequent student responses. We're going to talk a lot about active learning time or active engaged time. Monitor performance closely, right? You really want to monitor their progress. You don't want to wait until the end of the 9 weeks or the end of the year before you're like, oh yeah, my students haven't really been getting the instruction. So I guess it's too late. I'll just move them on to the next grade. No, 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 no. You want to make sure you're providing feedback and, affirmative and corrective feedback. You want to be brisk, maybe not quite as brisk as me. I do talk very fast. I am from Western New York originally. And I don't know, it was so cold up there, we just had to talk fast, I guess. So you might want to slow down just a little, but you also don't want to talk at this pace. Oh my gosh, that killed me. So go faster than that. You want to think about, some of your students might not understand how to kind of organize their knowledge. How did they put everything together? How does this relate to what they learned 2 weeks ago? Which is where the distributed and cumulative practice, oh my goodness, comes in, and we will talk about that in just a second. So here is one of those videos that I was talking about. So if you watch this, again, just go right into the PowerPoint that's posted, not the sound recordings. Go into the PowerPoint recording, put it in slideshow view, and then you'll be able to click right here and it will take you to a video. Let me see if I can do that really, really fast for y'all. I'm just gonna show you, it's gonna cut off, but that's okay. Just know that it's up here, the little clicky thing. See, there you go. So it'll take you right to, I'm not going to mess around with the box of my recording because I don't have to go back and unmess it up, but it'll take you right to, so this one is summary writing using a frame for first grade. There are elementary videos and there are second videos, and the site is just explicit instruction, the name of the textbook, .org, okay, explicitinstruction.org. So it gives you the transcript, it gives you, some good practices that you observed during the videos segment, okay? So things to look for, and then it kind of gives you some of the answers. We will look a little more closely at some of the videos later on in the semester, but I did just want to point this out to you. Again, it's explicitinstruction.org. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint. So that, again, is first grade, and it really gives you some focus questions, kind of as you watch the video. You don't have to turn anything in for this video, right? Again, we'll come back to some of the videos, some of the other videos later on. So you don't have to turn anything in, but just take some time, especially if you're new to education or you're new to teaching or you're new to, having a classroom. Take some time to watch this video or some of these other videos that I have linked also. Okay, so now let's think about some other key principles aligning with explicit instruction. So there are elements, right? What we talked about a few slides ago, those were the 16 elements of explicit instruction. These are more of the principles that go along with explicit instruction. And you'll kind of see what I mean in just a second. So for example, we want to make sure that we are optimizing academic learning time, right? So, which means students need to be successfully, okay, here's a big word, ready? Engaged in the core content and the core instruction. So think about what that means to you. What does active engagement or student engagement, what does that mean to you? If you're just sitting there, or if your students, excuse me, are sitting there listening to you lecture for, 3.5 hours, are they engaged? Are they learning? Are they actively participating? Probably not, right? So you probably don't want to lecture for that long. Just a little side tidbit. So you want to think about increasing student engagement and focusing on those big ideas. You want to think about being organized, establishing routines, right? That will help you. I'm losing my little mousey thing, my little clicker. It will help you to promote high levels of success. If your students know your expectations, going back to what we said a few minutes ago, you want to provide those academic expectations and behavioral expectations. You want to have routines. You want to have procedures. That will help your students be more successful. Okay, you also want to think about increasing the content coverage. How can you do that? And Dr. Hughes always used to say, teach the stuff and cut the fluff, right? So as much as we want to be, cutesy, especially if you're early childhood or elementary, that's what I was. I was early childhood special ed. So of course you want to be cutesy and fun and this and this, and there are ways to do that, but you also want to make sure that you're covering the content and teaching the stuff. Okay, so we'll come back to a lot. I think all of these principles as we go through the textbook. So for the content coverage, you want to think about what to teach, how will students practice it. You want to make sure you're teaching essential skills and also teach for generalization so that they can take those skills to other classrooms or with other teachers or with other peers, right? You don't want to teach your students something that they only know how to do in your classroom. You want to make sure that they can generalize that skill or that concept across environments, across people, like I said, across content areas, right? Like if you're teaching, note taking or highlighting, that's a skill that they can use in social studies, they can use in science, they could use in math. So you want to make sure that they are able to generalize that skill. You also want to think about grouping, scaffolding, stuff like that, and addressing different forms of knowledge. So your textbook describes these types of knowledge on page 11. We want to think about declarative knowledge. So what something is, right? Just the facts. So I'm actually taking a math class. I'm taking two math classes right now. Don't ask why. And so, I'm able to say what a rhombus is, right? I'm taking a geometry class. So that's a fact. Here's what here's what a rhombus is. Okay, declarative examples in your textbook are also when asked to name a letter, the student can do so accurately. This is the letter T, right? That's a fact there. We're not going to discuss if this is a T or not a T. It is a T. When asked what 6 times 4 is, they can say or write the correct product. We know what 6 times 4 is, right? It's a fact. We know that it's 24. It's not up for debate. When asked to tell the parts of an essay, the student can respond with introduction, body, and conclusion. And you might have some other parts thrown in there, right? But those are the basic parts. Okay, then there's procedural knowledge. So this is how to do something, how to perform steps or skills in a process or strategy. For example, how to calculate the missing measure of an angle in a rhombus. That's more than just saying, okay, this is a rhombus. That's taking it to kind of the next level and saying, okay, well, I know that the measures of the interior angles of a rhombus equal this many degrees. I know these 3 angles. Okay, that's easy. I can figure out this last one. The textbook gives you some examples of filling out a check, solving 2-digit multiplication problems, determine the main idea of a paragraph. Okay, so again, kind of that next level from just declarative, just the facts. Now we're looking into the procedural. How do you do something? Okay, and then the last type of knowledge is conditional. When do you do things? When do you use or when do you not use a particular skill or strategy? So for example, in geometry, A minus B does not mean A minus B. It means A not B, right? So it's very conditional to geometry. So if you see in geometry A and then the what looks like a minus sign, letter B, it does not mean take B away from A. It just means, oh, this includes the group or the set of A, but not B. Okay, some examples from your textbook. Being able to decide when to use a question mark to end a sentence, because not all sentences end with a question mark, right? They end with some form of punctuation, but we have to teach our students when to use a question mark and when to not use a question mark, going back to those non-examples. Okay, and then writing a product that reflects the desired topic, audience, and purpose. So all of those, knowing when to borrow from the next column in a subtraction problem, right? Because you don't always have to borrow. So those are just some examples, again, on page 11 in your textbook. So we're gonna look at, I don't know where my mouse is. So we're gonna look at some of the principles in a little more depth, but I am gonna stop part 1 here. So come on back and we will finish up chapter 1 with part 2 of the recording. So I'm just gonna stop here, but come on back for part 2 and we will start with some of the principles that we just talked about. Oh, goodness gracious, that we just talked about. Okay, so come on back.